Uh, I know you're talking a bit about forecasting the election tonight. Can you just give sort of a glimpse into what you'll be saying tonight and sort of what you'll be talking about?
What I'm going to do is I'm going to start off. I found I like doing the 50,000 foot in political environment and then kind of get down towards the nitty-gritty election.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found recently is that unless you immediately jump in and talk about what's going on the Republican side, you're kind of losing people.
Yep.
And so what I kind of do now is I start off and kind of check the box and try to make some sense of what is happening on the Republican side and then broaden back out and kind of go down there. And the thing is that you know, there are a lot of really smart guys, smart people talking on election night on the various networks. But I think they really ought to switch to decaf around 4 o'clock, because there's a tendency to hyperbole. This is hugely important because of this. The fact is, this nomination's over. I mean, it really is. And while it's not really in the best interest of the people that are on the cable shows to say, you know what, this thing's done, and so you really are kind of wasting your time watching us tonight, and you know, you ought to just go ahead and watch whatever else you'd be interested in tonight, because this nomination's settled. But the fact is, after every primary, I have somebody in my office compute this up. Right now, Rick Santorum would need to win 76% of the remaining delegates in this race. And if you're curious, Newt would need 89% of the remaining. This isn't going to happen. And by contrast, Romney needs a little less than about 51%. He's won 49.65% of all the delegates that have been allocated to one of the candidates or another. Whether Romney gets to 1,144 by the time the last primary in Utah is held in late June, or whether he's within 20 or 50, you know, delegates, but you know, he's going to get there. And so we know this is like a novel where you know the end, you figured out the end of the novel. Now, do you know what's in every chapter and on every page between now and then? No, not really. But once you figured out the ending, it's all kind of anticlimactic, and that's sort of where we are. Now, the question to me is, I'm a big on independent voters. I think, you know, they're the people. We know that 90+% of Republicans are going to vote for the Republican candidate. 90+% of the Democratic voters are going to vote for, or voters who call themselves Democrats are going to vote for the Democratic candidate. It's those voters in the middle, the independents, and they were 29% of all the voters in the last election. Last year, you know, in all the Gallup surveys, when you combined them up, it was 40% of all voters. It was 31% call themselves Democrats, 27% Republicans, and 40% independents. So whether it's 29 or 40, but it, you know, it's a big block. And these are the people that they're not liberals for the most part. They're not conservatives for the most part. They're you know, a lot of them are moderates, but some of them are just non-ideological. They just don't view American politics through the prism of left-right. And for them, the economy is either working for them or not, and they either think elected officials are responsive or not. I mean, they're sort of very pragmatic, and you know, they're not watching Sean Hannity or Bill O'Reilly, and they're not watching Rachel Maddow or Ed Schultz. I mean, they're you know, if anything, they're, you know, it's the #1 rated cable network in the country. The last 4 years, it's the USA Network. And it's where you'll see reruns of NCIS and Law and Order SVU and Psych and Monk and on Monday Nights Wrestling. And the thing is, the common denominator has nothing to do with politics whatsoever. And look at what the top TV, you know, people, most, you know, people in the middle, they don't know or care what John Boehner or Nancy Pelosi or Harry Reid or Mitch McConnell, or for that matter, what President Obama said today or yesterday. You know, they're just, you know, I guess the point is conservatives and Republicans have passion, and liberals and Democrats have passion, but independents, they have lives. And they're just going to go, you know, they're not living and breathing this stuff. And they're the people that really matter. And for Romney, here's a guy that's, I think, a relatively centrist, a little, you know, somewhat right of center, but he's turned himself into a pretzel. and he's trying to be somebody he's not. And to get this nomination, he's running to the right as far and hard as he possibly can, and much longer than he ever, I think, probably wanted to do. And every week that goes by, that he's having to run as far to the right as he can, he's getting further away from those independent voters that he needs to appeal to in the general election. Now, can he get back into position in time for the general election? Maybe. I think it's going to end up being a very close race. But he's getting farther and farther out of position every week that goes by. And so it's making it, a bigger challenge every single week of how does he get back over towards the general election. I tend to think right now that if President Obama and Governor Romney were stocks, that Obama's probably a little overvalued and Romney's probably a little undervalued, because I think, right now he's trying to pretend like he's as the most conservative guy on the planet. And even though he was an honors graduate from BYU and got joint law and MBA degrees from Harvard, I kind of doubt if he ever took an acting class, because he's not very good at pretending. And my hunch is that in a general election, once he's nailed down the nomination, he will be somewhat more convincing running towards the center, which is, I think, what he really is, than pretending to be what he's not. Now, there's obviously a lot of rehabilitation work along the way, and that's why I think, he's got a challenge ahead of him. But ultimately, I think this election is going to be settled more on what happens in the economy over the next 7 months than anything else. And